Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. In our first story, the creep lost his job because he messed with our OP. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Want to make me uncomfortable? Have fun being fired? I, 29-year-old female, went to my second tennis practice yesterday. A few minutes after stepping inside, a man knocks on the window, gesturing for me to let him in through the locked door. He was dressed for tennis and didn't look suspicious in any way, so I did. He thanked me and struck up a conversation. Turns out he was a tennis coach and this was his second day. Within not more than 1 minute, I felt he was a bit odd. He began talking about how he's sad, he only gets to train boys and never girls, how girls are much nicer to watch, and how he had to resort to bars to see women at all. He continued by telling me how he was going to watch me on the court. At the same time, he came closer, and eventually he stood so close he was almost touching me. By this point, I started being both annoyed and very uncomfortable. I did not want to step on the court and feel sexualized by the coach on the court next to mine. Walking onto the court, I met the woman who runs the place. She happens to be someone I've known since I was literally 5 years old, and she was like an extra family for me growing up. I told her about the coach's behavior, how uncomfortable I felt, and how I was thinking of going home instead. She was pissed. I've never seen her so angry. Apparently, the coach started working there the day before, and he'd acted weird then too. They were so confused because the guy had been hired upon several recommendations from very high up. He's supposed to be amazing. I asked her not to make a deal out of it there and then, which she promised she wouldn't. I also got to switch courts so I wouldn't have to play next to him. This morning she texted me saying he's out the door and won't be coming back, and she hoped I'd feel safe coming in for practice again next week. Turns out being amazing can only take you so far when you're an idiot. And our second story. CC signature says CID, so I'm gonna need to see your ID. Working the register as lead cashier one wonderfully busy day, I had the pleasure of interacting with a rather lovely human being. This guy and his buddies were standing in line, not being too obnoxious, just a little loud. They ended up at my register, dumping their goodies on the counter while complaining about the wait. After thanking them for their patience, I tried to make small talk, but the guy decided to change the tone. He started making rude comments to his friends about cashiers. I get it, not my favorite job, but it pays the bills while I'm in school. So after I'd run through all his items, he swiped his card through the machine. As I was hitting the fun sequences of buttons to end this excruciating encounter, he decides he's not done being a jerk. Dude, you didn't ask to see my ID for credit card. It's your job to make sure I'm not using a stolen credit card. He elbows one of his buddies to witness his mockery. Oh, sorry, system's running at his debit. Did you put in your PIN? It's not a debit card, it's a credit card. It's really not that hard. He holds up his card to show me. Look, it even says CID on the back of the card. I don't know about other retail stores, but we'd already moved away from checking signatures on the back of cards against the signature line because by that time the transaction has already gone through. We don't have a definite policy of asking for ID as long as the back of the card is signed. All right, cool. Can I see your ID? Thank you. You should have done that to begin with. He opens his wallet and begins fishing through his wallet looking for his ID. After a moment, a blank look crosses his face. I don't have it. That's okay, I can take another form of payment. I don't have another way to pay. You have to take the card. Sorry, sir, once I've asked for ID, it's store policy that you have to show it. So I know we have a policy for this process when it comes to buying alcohol. I just went with the logic that the same is true for credit cards. I was pleasantly surprised he didn't throw a fit at this point, but I'd used his own logic against him. After the shuffle of shame into his group of friends, one of them moves forward, swipes his debit card, and pays for the stuff. I thank them for coming in as they head out the door laughing, but this time it wasn't at me. He was being a smart butt and got his comeuppance. Good luck with ice. So this happened about 10 to 15 years ago. It's been a long time. It's the sweetest revenge. My backstory. I was born in the States, but my family are immigrants. My dad worked his butt off to become a U.S. citizen, working 3 jobs, riding a bike to work because he couldn't afford a car. He and his dad saved all the money so they could get the rest of the family here. I say this because I understand the struggles immigrants face coming here, starting a new life without any support. I would never do this to someone actually trying to better their life. This piece of crap, though, didn't deserve to be here. The story's about my best friend's boyfriend. He lived with her in her family's house, renting a room, driving her car to work, and using her cell phone that her parents paid for. She was 19 at the time. I was about 24. I was working at a club with my boyfriend. I worked really late, and I had 2 kids. I asked my best friend if she could come over and watch them while they slept, basically just come hang out at my place. My son was about 6 or 7 years old. The little one was less than a year old at the time. She asked if she could have people over, so she wasn't bored. I said, sure, I don't mind. I asked that she just not throw any parties. We laughed as she agreed. Everything was fine when we got back. I thanked her and she left. Later that night, I saw a cup with a cigarette butt in it. So I texted my friend and asked if someone smoked in the house. I'm not a smoker, but because my son's really little and the older one had asthma, I didn't smoke in the house. I went outside. The reply I received didn't make any sense. Reading, what kind is it? I said, I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, there were only 2 other people here. How could you not know if one of them smoked inside? She's not a smoker, so I knew it wasn't her. I started receiving more questions instead of a yes or no answer. The replies also didn't make much sense. It was broken English and stupid spelling mistakes. By this point, I knew I wasn't talking to her. Instead, it was her boyfriend. My best friend is white, and he's Mexican. He was trying to fool me so I would tell him who she was here with. I never liked him, not for any specific reason. He just rubbed me the wrong way from the beginning. They'd been dating for about a year or 2. By this point, I knew he was a piece of crap. I really dislike him because of how he treated her. He was controlling and abusive. I didn't see her as much as anyone because I had gotten into an argument with him at her house earlier that year. We all wanted to go out to a friend's place. He didn't. He said she couldn't go either. She wanted to, but he said no. I told her we were leaving. It was really late, but this a-hole made a big deal about it. He decided it was a good idea to wake her dad. So her dad would force her to stay home. This made me mad because he has no respect. He lives in their home, and he can't even let her dad sleep. Besides, she was an adult, not to mention her dad never cared if she was going anywhere with me. Her parents knew if she was with me, she was safe. After that minor blow-up, I decided not to be around him. I wouldn't be able to hide my contempt of him. This is why she didn't come over to watch my kids with him. I didn't understand why she stayed with him. Specifically, after she told me that he forced himself on her, I put up with him for my friend. I knew if I was around, he wouldn't dare to mistreat her in front of me. Back to the texts. He's pretending to be her, and I tell him I know it's him and talk crap. He then said he was going to come over, shoot up my house with my kids still inside. I basically laughed to myself. I didn't believe him. I replied with a threat to get him deported. I got in touch with a mutual friend of me and my best friend. She knew more about him. She told me he had a warrant out for his arrest. The cops had gone over to pick him up one day, but they didn't find him. The family hid him. He hid next door. My best friend's neighbor was her grandma. I didn't know any of that. I also didn't know his full legal name. She gave me everything I needed. I told her what I was going to do and not to tell our friend. I called the cops, gave them his location, everything they needed to know so they wouldn't miss him. They actually picked him up the same night. I then called ICE. He was put on ICE hold on. He couldn't get bailed out of jail now. Once in custody, the only way he was getting out was when he reached Mexico. I felt bad for my friend and their daughter. I knew she probably would never see him, but I believe I did her a favor. I ended up telling her what I did long after. I didn't want her to find out through someone else and get even more upset with me. It's been so long since then. She never said she was mad about it. I'm sure she was at the beginning, though. In the end, I did her a favor. Her life has completely changed in a good way. Her daughter has a better father now, someone who takes care of both of them. D-Head lost everything he owned, lost his girl, side chick, and was arrested and deported. He also lost any chance of having a real relationship with his daughter. I did hear that he came back, but took about 10 years. The daughter was less than a year old. She's about 13 now. I believe he's met her once since this all happened. He got to see the great life she has without him in her life. And our last story. HOA member gets revenge on crappy lady. Okay, so there's a lady in my neighborhood's HOA, Homeowners Association, who gets extremely PO'd when people feed the ducks at our neighborhood pond because the ducks crap where they aren't supposed to, or something like that. So an old lady that's like 60 goes down to the pond and is feeding the ducks some grapes, and the lady, who I'll call Karen, sees her and walks down and starts screaming and cussing out this old lady for feeding the ducks. At the next HOA meeting, the old lady's daughter, who I'll call Diane, goes and starts cussing out Karen for screaming at her 60-year-old mom. The meeting was taking place at a pizza parlor, by the way. Diane is kicked off the HOA, and Karen gets off scot-free. Well, a man who we'll call Dave goes and asks what that was about, and Diane tells him the whole story. And Dave is not happy. So he goes and buys about 60 pounds worth of bird feed, finds out where Karen's house is at, and makes a trail of bird feed leading from the pond to Karen's house. Once the trail gets to Karen's house, he covers her entire yard with bird feed. Karen lives about 2 houses down from me, so I could hear the screams when she woke up to see about every duck in our neighborhood, about 50 ducks, converging on her lawn. Her lawn is trashed with the ducks' crap, and it smells. Long story short, Karen was kicked off the HOA, and Diane was allowed back in, and got some sweet revenge. Thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.